This is a video of two halves. The first half is a review and reaction to every game shown during Sony's February 2025 State of Play. And the second half is my analysis of the current and future state of Sony and the console landscape in general, with a comparison to Xbox's current strategy as well. If you'd prefer to watch the second half and return to my full review later, the timestamp is both on screen and in the description below, so you can watch this video in any order at your convenience. Now sit back, relax, grab a drink and maybe a snack, and without further ado, I present to you my review of Sony's 2025 State of Play. The State of Play began with a bang. Monster Hunter Wilds was shown off in all its gigantic monster killing glory, and it was very much more of what we'd already seen before. I won't lie to you, I've dabbled in Monster Hunter here and there, but never quite got the bug for it. But if this trailer and those I've seen before was anything to go by, this could be the excuse I've been waiting for to dive in and hunt down some creatures. The main announcement made in this particular trailer was that there's a free title update coming in spring 2025, and we can expect a free monster named Mitsune, some event quests, and I'm assuming some gear too. Next title update is set for summer, so you monster hunters have plenty to look forward to there. The one thing I'd say to watch out for with this game is that I've heard a fair amount about the performance thanks to the previews that came out, and also the network test was run during the recent PS5 outage. From what I've heard, and I'm sure there'll be some minor changes for the full game mind, but this close to the February 28th release date there can't be too many, the performance on PC is rough, capital R. That's due to the game pushing for much better looking graphics than we've seen in the past, and I've got to be honest, that's not what people come to Monster Hunter for. Not generally anyway. Of course, this could all be ironed out, but that's just something for you eager day one buyers to watch out for. Maybe wait until Digital Foundry releases their performance review on this one. They also announced pre-order bonuses made up of the Guild Knight set and an art book, fairly common for a game like this, but nothing too special looking. Look forward to that one on February the 28th. The next game looked absolutely awesome. Published by Sega, Shinobi Art of Vengeance arrives on August the 29th of this year. From the looks of it, it's a 2D hack and slash based on a ninja, and the combat looks smooth as hell. I may have to slightly amend this section of the script because I've actually learned that this is an established franchise, but let's just continue on and pretend that we didn't know this, because my research for that particular part of the video was poor. One thing I'd like to particularly highlight is the art style. I love games with unique and quirky art styles, and while I'd say that this art style isn't hugely unique, it definitely falls under the category of quirky. It's almost a cartoonish, hand-drawn like aesthetic. I think that on a handheld, this would be amazing to both play and look at. For those of you that don't have either a handheld PC or a PlayStation Portal, this would also look class on your TV. I just think that this one looks like it was made for handhelds. It's also coming to PS4 though, so if you haven't upgraded yet, you won't miss out. I must admit, I wasn't hugely excited for a game like Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. I'm a die-hard Mario Kart fan, so most karting games outside of that don't really interest me. But for what it's worth, this looks super cool. I don't think it's the most original, or even the most interesting, but for any Mega Sonic fans, this one is for you. The couple of mechanics that did interest me were the way that the track was shown off kind of morphed into a different one as a ring came down onto the screen. That was cool. And then also the way that you can change your car's wheels mid-race, kinda handy. Obviously we're yet to see if that'll make any noticeable difference to gameplay, but if it does then, slay? You can wishlist this one right now. It's coming to both PS4 and PS5, and there's also a closed network test being held on February 21st, as if our Februaries weren't already ridiculously jam-packed full of games. Avowed comes out next week, and I'm only 17 hours into Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I may have to say goodbye to my free time for a little while longer. Okay, this next one actually looked kinda sick. Considering I'm a Pokemon nerd who's never really looked outside the series for my creature catching fix, I'm surprised by just how much I like the look of Digimon's story Time Stranger. The title doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but it does look decent. I like the graphical style, and fine, I'll admit it, I do like the occasional anime game. And anime in general. This one is published by Bandai Namco and arrives in 2025. You can wishlist it right now on your PS5, but unfortunately there's no mention of PS4. If you guys have been watching for a while, you'll know that I love an indie game, or a game made by a small team. I think they can often be more focused and complete than the huge open world odysseys we see in AAA gaming nowadays, so it was nice to see Lost Soul Aside, a game by China Hero Project, announced by one of the developers that had built up all the way from being a solo developer to now releasing a game in collaboration with PlayStation. This looked absolutely incredible, and I'm tempted to say that I'll almost certainly be reviewing it when it does release on May 30th, 2025, on both PS5 and PC. It's a third-person action game, and every scene looked more gorgeous than the last. The animations are clean as hell, if this trailer is anything to go by, and for a third-person action game, the combat looked seriously appealing. I only say this because to me, third-person action games can often look quite samey, but this one really stood out to me. Go and watch the trailer for yourself, because genuinely, this one looked the business. You can wishlist Lost Soul Aside right now, which is exactly what I'll be doing, or have done, by the time that you watch this video. Next up, there was a series of brief announcements. Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Now that is a mouthful. It's been given a demo starting at 7 AM PT on February 14th. Or yesterday, as I record this video, where you'll be able to try out 2 different battle styles. I know less than nothing about this series, as I've never played either them or Yakuza in general, so I'll move on quickly so I don't sound stupid or offend anyone. There was also a Yakuza crossover with Dave the Diver, to which definitely wins the most expected collaboration award of the night from me. I'm going to have to devote a little more of the next section than planned for this next game. The Splitgate 2 Alpha was announced for February 27th, and I loved Splitgate 1. As someone who played a hell of a lot of Portal and Halo while growing up, this is one of my favourite games as I waited for Halo Infinite, which, controversially I know, but I actually really enjoyed Halo Infinite. Anyway, the insane mixture of the 2 games made for one of the most uniquely designed area shooters I've ever played, and I was so sad when I saw just how much the original Splitgate 1 fell off, so best believe you are going to see me give impressions on this alpha. A few of the things I've heard about this game have me ever so slightly worried, but I'm hoping the gameplay speaks for itself. I encourage as many of you to hop into this game as you possibly can, because if it's anything like the first one, it's going to be an absolute classic. Honestly, I couldn't give a shit about wrestling, so WWE 2K25 is a big fat meh for me. Those of you that are interested can take a look at the trailer, because I have few to no thoughts on this one. Next. Talking of next, Borderlands 4, which, hell yeah. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't gassed for this one, which looks like more of the same from the series, but more of the same is actually enough for me, so gimme. Good looter shooters have been few and far between as of late, so best believe I'll be giving this one a shot when it releases on September 23rd, 2025, which seems really soon, and I'm incredibly excited. You probably won't get a review for that one, as my attention span for finishing live service games is horrendous, but I encourage all of you to check out this series on the off chance you haven't already. You can find the first few games at insanely low prices on Steam, or in second-hand game shops. There was even a special state of play announced for spring this year, focused exclusively on Borderlands 4. From the creators of It Takes Two came another look at the similarly co-op Split Fiction. We've already seen this one, but that doesn't stop this trailer being any less awesome. It looks a lot more combat focused than the last entry, and that sounds good to me because I love a bit of action in my video games. It features a story involving the friendship between the two main characters, and looks to be just as emotional a tale as the first game was. There was also a release date announced for this one, and that date is the 6th of March 2025, so not at all long to wait for you couch co-op people out there. I know you still exist, and I should know. I'm one of them. If you've seen my Outlast Trials review, you'll know that I'm a massive fan of horror games. I've never played Until Dawn, but from its creative, Supermassive Games, comes Directive 8020, a co-op horror game that looks like it's going for a more sci-fi vibe. It also gives the impression it's going to involve psychological horror elements, which I'm also a massive nerd for, so best believe this one is firmly on my radar. This new title looks a business, with alien infections, blood and gore all over the place, and it's coming to PS5 on October 2nd. That's my Halloween sorted, and what we did see of the game impressed me. I'll definitely be checking that one out, and if you're interested, it's available to wishlist right now. We then return to something that I'm excited for, even more so than everything else we've seen so far. There is a new Five Nights at Freddy's game on the horizon, and I'm already invested. I think I've played every single title in the series so far, and I wasn't hugely impressed with its last open worlds-ish survival horror iteration, so this one is going to be interesting. It's called Secrets of the Mimic, and there are some really freaky looking animatronics lumbering around the place. There's even a little phones operator going on in the background, which does make me think back to the old games, when times were simpler. Back in school, I used to play every single FNAF game on my phone when it released, as I didn't have a PC back then, so I experienced the series as many of us did, on a tiny screen, in the dark, faced about an inch away when I got the absolute living daylight scared out of me by Foxy coming from the end of the corridor in FNAF 2. This would be one to watch for sure, and I'll be checking it out for myself when it releases on the 13th of June 2025. A bizarre release date for a horror game, but hey ho, I'm still gonna play it. I'm gonna use this moment to say that if you made it this far, consider subscribing. I love making these types of videos, so expect many more of them as more and more things are announced. We seem to be on a bit of a horror trend, as what came next was an incredibly unique looking horror game called The Midnight Walk, a cozy horror game made entirely out of clay. All I'm saying is there's absolutely nothing cozy looking about this one. Its art style absolutely captivated me from the second it was revealed, with clay models creepier than any I've ever seen, chasing after the player and his little fire-bearing creature. Apparently your task is to bring fire back to the world, and I think that after witnessing this trailer, I'll be more than up for the challenge. Seriously, this looks so cool. That clay animation art style is so unique, and I can't wait to experience it for myself. It's kind of giving Wallace and Gromit, made in your nightmares rather than invented in your daydreams. It also doesn't arrive with a massive wait time, as The Midnight Walk releases on the 8th of May 2025. I really recommend going and watching the trailer for this one yourself, especially if you're a sucker for a cool art style as I am. Interestingly enough, it's also coming to PSVR 2, which I can imagine being absolute nightmare fuel. I actually bought a PSVR 2 on launch, but I sold it again after it looked like Sony had forgotten about it. But it looks like they've dusted it off. Unfortunately, mine now lives in CEX in Surrey, so all I can do is hope that it comes to MetaQuest 3 as well. Next was Darwin's Paradox from Konami. The short trailer didn't reveal much, but it did look kinda cool, with an octopus stealthing around a facility full of aliens. It looks kinda weird and wonderful, but as I say, not much revealed here, but it is coming this year. I'll preempt this next game by saying that I've never actually played a Warriors game. I skipped Hyrule Warriors because I'd heard the performance on Switch was abysmal, and I literally cannot cope with games that run awfully. The title that was announced was Warriors Abyss, a roguelike take on the Warriors format that really grabbed my attention. It's actually out, as it was shadow dropped onto PS5 and PS4 the same day as the State of Play. I probably won't review this one as I've just got too much content on my plate right now, but I'll definitely be considering picking it up at a later date, and I'd highly recommend going to check it out, because the Warriors format and roguelike game structure just seem to go together naturally, you know? You'll probably all know that it's a generation of remakes and remasters, so it wasn't surprising to see Sony announcing another remaster. This time, of Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny, which was looking sharp I must admit. I've never played an Onimusha game, so I can't comment too much on just how much of an upgrade it is from the original, or on the quality of the original, but it certainly looks the business, and arrives bizarrely only on PS4 on the 23rd of May 2025. That leads perfectly into the next announcement, as for the State of Play's first look into next year, they released a short teaser for the next Onimusha game, Way of the Sword, and this one is exclusively PS5 based. Capcom looks to have done yet another phenomenal job of making a gorgeous looking game, as the graphics in this title look phenomenal, and the combat looks even better. Give me a sec just to talk about the combat because I'm so down for this one on the basis of that alone. Sword combat for me in third-person action games is a massive spectrum, and I prefer my combat to be more input based and less animation focused, if that makes sense. Sort of more like Ghost of Tsushima than Assassin's Creed, because I find that with Assassin's Creed games, the character will move kind of where I want him to go, but not really. You see limbs sort of curling into place to do roughly what you asked it to do, and trying and vaguely succeeding at the same time, but I don't know. I prefer what this looks like, or what it looks to be anyway. Quick, brief animations that don't get in the way of player input. Of course, any combat needs to be experienced to be properly reviewed, but I'm incredibly down for what this promises to be, and you can wishlist it now on the PS Store. Up next was something we've seen many times before by now. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater has had several trailers up to this point, and it continues to look like an awesome remake of a classic. Every time I see a trailer for this game, the graphics blow me away, and this particular teaser came with a release date, thank God. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater arrives on the 28th of August of this year, and I'm going to be playing it best believe. We also saw the return of an old minigame that was part of the original PS2 release, which you can look forward to if you decide to pick it up this summer. It wasn't a huge amount of new information, but I'm just happy to have a release date for this one, finally. I don't really know a huge amount about the next game that was shown, but Hell Is Us now has a release date of September 4th, 2025. This one looks cool, and I'll definitely be going back to other trailers, and I don't exactly know how I missed the original reveal, but yeah, looks intriguing. I'll investigate. And next was DLC for Lies of P, the accomplished Souls-like that I haven't played but I did hear really good things about it. For those of you that aren't completely hopeless at Souls games or Souls-likes like I am, this one looks like it will satisfy your need for a new challenge. Lies of P Overture releases in September 2025. I don't know why I said that so slowly, but it really makes you want to check out the base game, and I might finally have the perfect excuse. The title shown after that was weird and wonderful looking. Dreams of Another has one of the most unique art styles I've seen in a long while. Everything looks like it's made out of circular pixels. It's bright and colourful. Almost looks like a retro game because of the art style, but certainly isn't because of how many tiny pixels clearly go into each character and landscape. I'm actually kind of digging this one, and there isn't a long time to wait either, as Dreams of Another arrives on PS5 this year. Sweet. The tagline is no creation without destruction, and from what the developer explained in the small explanation of the game after the initial reveal, was that you use the weapons in the game to transform the environment around you, and I'm down to be honest with you. It looks like part of one of the weirder dreams you might have if you slept in a funny position, and I also appreciated the airy fairy vibes it looks to bring to the table. Pretty nice. Okay, so I feel like I should be excited for this game, but honestly, Days Gone Remastered left me feeling empty. Seeing one of my favourite PS4 era games being brought to PS5 just made me think back to the days where PlayStation had a consistent library of good single player games, but I'll talk more about that in the analysis section later. This revisited title arrives on April 25th, 2025, and features a sprinkling of new game modes and improved graphics. Sony also revealed that, similarly to when Spider-Man got a remastered version for the PS5, this one can be picked up for a tenner if you own the original game. Oh, and it is also coming to PC, but obviously because the PC graphic settings are unlocked, this will be becoming a standard DLC. Next was a lightning quick snippet shown for DLC releasing at some stage soon for Stellar Blade, and it's called Stellar Blade and Goddess of Victory, Nikke DLC. After that, however, was a brief showing of the episodic adventure Lost Records Bloom and Rage. The first tape of this game revolving around a group of teenagers arrives on February 18th, so only a couple of days after this video comes out, depending of course on when it comes out, because I haven't exactly been proactive in editing as much as I'd like. I love indie games. I think they often offer the most interesting takes on gaming, as they aren't restricted by trends or corporate overlords telling them that they have to sell as much as possible. That's why I was excited to see that two indie titles are launching directly into the PS Plus game catalogue this year. One being the architecture-focused Blueprints, another indie game with a unique art style and concept. It's presented as a mystery with a player building out a mansion with rooms that shift around, and it releases this spring. The other indie game was Abiotic Factor, a 6-player survival crafting game, and it looks cool. Didn't quite grab my attention like Blueprints did, but it's going to be on PS Plus, so, you know, may as well grab it to take a look anyways. The next game shown didn't so much grab my attention, it demanded it. Tides of Annihilation is what seems to be a third-person action game in development for PS5 by Eclipse Glow Games, and what a trailer this was. It's set in a dystopian version of London, and I have no idea what's going on, but some of the huge monsters that seem to be made out of living buildings were so cool. The architecture of London is a particularly good target for a game like this as well, and I was invested from the second I saw Big Ben swamped and entangled in darkness. This showcase has been dragging for me at this point, with big reveals not exactly coming thick and fast, but this one felt worth waiting for. Those hair animations alone impressed me, and there looked to be a hell of a lot going on in some of the platforming sequences. Tides of Annihilation is available to wishlist now. I'll be looking forward to learning more about this one as the year goes on. The State of Play finally seemed to remember that it was supposed to be exciting. I've got to be honest, thank God for that. This script was becoming ever so slightly difficult to write as I became more and more bored with a lack of exciting games. But Metal Eden was shown off, and oh my god, this got me typing quicker than I had been in an hour. So, a bit of background as to why I'm so excited for this one. I reviewed Ghostrunner for a little site called thexboxhub.com back in 2022, which you can check out in the link of description if you fancy. 2022, by the way, it's because when the complete edition came out, they gave copies of it to review companies, and I worked for a website and I had the opportunity to review it myself, and I absolutely loved it. And it became my most read review at the time. Metal Eden draws strikingly similar comparisons, with wall running and insanely quick movements, only this is an FPS, and not a melee focused game. I'm so into this, and you can absolutely expect a review when it drops on May the 6th, 2025. Go and wishlist this one and watch the trailer. It looks absolutely awesome, and at the exact time, this State of Play really needed something awesome. Trust me. Next was Mind's Eye, and this was a trailer split into two parts. One of them was cinematic sorts, and one gameplay trailer. I've got to be honest, this one didn't really land with me. The first trailer with a focus on malfunctioning military technology was cool, and definitely piqued my interest. But the second trailer didn't really feel like it went with the first, if that makes sense. So, the first trailer made this game look like it was going to be some epic first-person action game with some third-person driving. But it turns out this is actually a third-person shooter, and the gunplay didn't exactly grab me. It's explosion after explosion, which is fine for some games, but a game that's supposed to be involving highly skilled individuals? I don't know. I think that's too many explosions takes away from the focus of the gunplay and the realism of the game. It's sort of like when I played Skull and Bones. The explosions are pretty, but would a pirate ship really explode like that? It sort of just takes away from the tightness of the gunplay when there's an explosion going off every few seconds and makes you concentrate on that instead. But of course, I'm willing to be proven wrong on this one, but for now, I'm a little tentative. It's available to be wishlisted now, and launches this summer. And at last, finally, we saw a PS Studios logo. And I'm going to say it once more, finally. And it's not only a PS Studios game, but Housemarque. Oh my god, okay. So if you don't know why this is so amazing to me, my favourite PS5 era game so far is Returnal, and I played it non-stop for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I've returned, get it, to it several times since. Their next game is called Saros, and it looks to be very much a spiritual sequel to Returnal. We didn't see much of this one, but honestly, I don't need to. I trust Housemarque, as they've proven that their games are some of the most creative and mechanically sound in the business. Returnal was such an instant classic, brutally difficult and immensely satisfying, with the best implementation of the DualSense controller of any game I've played before or since. And Saros is being billed as an evolution of everything Returnal did. I won't go on about it too much, as later this year more gameplay is being shown, and you can absolutely expect a deep dive look from me then. Saros releases on PS5 in 2026, and what a finale for what was definitely one of the state of plays I've ever seen. Let's jump into the analysis, because I've got a lot to say on this one. So, here's the part of the video where we jump into a bit of analysis, and by a bit, I mean a lot, because there was so much to study from how the state of play went, and what Sony had on show. I'll start off with a little bit of general personal analysis, and then we'll go on to the state of Sony in 2025. I covered 30 of the games shown in this state of play, skipping a little of the less notable stuff such as the new PS Plus Premium Classic Catalogue games being added, as there's not really much I can say about them apart from they're coming and here's when. Out of those, one game was first party. One. I'll come back to this point in a couple of minutes, but can we please just take a sec to note that one first party showing in a 40 plus minute state of play, and the first one of the year no less, is a damning indictment of just where Sony's at with its first party developments, and we've recently been hearing rumours that there's not going to be a showcase this summer either. Of all those games, I would say that my favourites were Saros, of course, Metal Eden, Tides of Annihilation, Midnight Walk, and Splitgate 2. We already heard plenty about Splitgate 2. Midnight Walk is an indie title, Metal Eden isn't associated with Sony, and Saros isn't releasing until 2026. It's a seriously worrying thing that only one of my favourite titles that was shown in this state of play was published by Sony, and yes, I know there's only one, but look how many titles there were, 30, and one of them was a first party game. So what the hell is even going on? Well, those of you tuned into the state of gaming or gaming social media will know that Sony had planned a huge pivot into live service games. That was after years of huge success and quite literally dominating the console war off the back of their single player games, which are both hugely popular and have a level of quality not seen anywhere else as consistently. God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, controversial, Uncharted 4, Horizon, Spider-Man. Those were the games that catapulted the PS4 into the position that all but guaranteed Sony's victory in the battle for console supremacy. What have we seen since then? Returnal, phenomenal game. God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man 2, remakes of both The Last of Us games, and a director's cut of Ghost of Tsushima. We've also got a sequel to the more niche but criminally underrated Death Stranding upcoming, and a remaster of Days Gone on the horizon. Plus Ghost of Yotei, of course. It's a pretty barren slate considering the fact that every one of those PS4 titles I mentioned came within a 4-year period. And in that same time frame, Sony has released so little when you compare both time periods side by side. And what are the live service games? We all know what happened to Concord, the biggest and most public live service flop of all time. We've seen live service games from the Last of Us developer Naughty Dog canned, several others put on permanent hiatus or cancelled, and the only game we've seen anything of is Marathon by Destiny creators Bungie, and we've barely seen it and rumours have been flying around that the title is in serious trouble. It all just seems to be a massive implosion fueled by poor strategy, money-hungry corporate leads, and mismanagement. There's no other way to look at it really, and it baffles me that anyone could say that Sony is in a good space right now. I've got a PS5 and an Xbox Series X, and my PS5 seems to be sitting in an increasing pile of dust, while my Xbox is having new games installed and uninstalled on a rotational basis, depending on which massive game is coming out next, and there's just so many of them. You could say, of course, that all these Xbox games will eventually or imminently be coming to PS5. But with Game Pass, I've got a value proposition so good, there really isn't a point in buying those games on PS. It's not like Sony is releasing a constant stream of first party games that I'd be willing to drop money into. And I'll get all those games on day one with Game Pass. I'd take that any day over paying 60 quid for them over on the PS Store, which is exactly the strategy Xbox seems to be buying into. Those with an Xbox console, or on PC, get all of their first party games on day one, and then they sweep up the rest of the interested PS crowd with their paid games. It just makes me sad, honestly, to see the state that Sony seems to have got itself into. Seeing how reliable they were, and how consistent they were of producing banger after banger, hit after hit, of the most groundbreaking single player games we've ever seen, to a company that seems to be hemorrhaging money on their single player games. Well, putting all their eggs into a live service basket. We all know how that goes as well. Live service games, or successful ones anyway, are 1 in a million. You can't rest your entire first party strategy on their success. Look at what games remain popular. Fortnite, Among Us, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, Roblox, Minecraft, if you include it separately Call of Duty Warzone, which is admittedly not in the best state but it's still hugely popular, and more recently Marvel Rivals. Those are games that are all either free, cheap, and on multiple subscription services, or established franchises with more than 20 years of history. How are you supposed to compete with that when you're advertising your very old-fashioned looking game for $70? And yes, I am talking about Concord. My brutally honest opinion is that I can't really see Marathon doing hugely well either. The extraction shooter genre is niche as it is, with only Escape from Tarkov having cracked that particular formula, with the exception of Hunt Showdown of course, and yet it's both of those games really. They're both still too hardcore for most people. I can maybe see Bungie having enough brand identity and first person shooter prestige to push this one out the gate, but that's really been eroded over the last couple of years with the neglect of Destiny 2. It all just looks woeful for Sony at the moment, and this state of play was honestly disappointing. I know I've been excited for many of the titles shown off in this round of trailers, but so few of them were related to Sony, it just didn't feel like a Sony state of play. More like a generic round of game trailers with the PS5 logo stamped on the release dates. Individually, if you look at the game trailers and my reactions to them, it doesn't look too bad, but if you look at the entire showcase as a whole, and put that in context with the rest of Sony's current slate, and it really paints a picture of just what's going on over there. It's going to take years, and I mean years, for Sony to right the ship on their first party development, and that could literally not have come for a worse time for them, or a better time for Xbox. And we have to talk about Xbox because as a comparison, it makes Sony's position all the more damning. Let's look at the Xbox slate for 2025 alone. Doom: The Dark Ages, South of Midnight, Avowed, The Outer Worlds 2, Fable, Towerborn, and there's probably loads more that I didn't even think to mention. Those are just the first few that stand out in my head. After the State of Play came out, there was a whole series of articles published about the fact that Xbox has more first-party games releasing on PS5 than Sony does. What has Sony come to in 2025 when Microsoft is set to make more money from first-party games on their own platform than they are? There could not be a more problematic fact if we're looking at the current strategies of both companies. Yes, the messaging of Xbox has been shocking, and at times it almost felt like a betrayal of their longtime fans. But that strategy is clearly starting to pay off. As Xbox heads into 2025 and beyond with a phenomenal slate of games that are being well reviewed, and Sony begins the year with little to show for the last 4 years of development. You could say that Xbox has bought their own success, but if we look at the general audience of games, it doesn't matter. It's what does matter in the gaming business is results. And that's exactly what you can expect from Xbox from now on. Where Sony seems to be suffering from their own success in the last generation. It reminds me of the original PS3 release actually, where Sony outpriced their own audience and allowed Xbox to catch up with them with the Xbox 360. Sony ended up outselling Xbox, but the generation started off poorly, and this one has been no different. The one difference that we can note is that Microsoft has chosen to permanently alter its strategy to shift to what looks to be the very likely future of gaming, where console ownership and platform loyalty is agnostic and unnecessary, and digital streaming is king. Sony seems to be going into the future blind, which as a fan of healthy competition in gaming, is worrying to see. As they pivot back to their old strategy of single player releases, and slowly but surely get back into a solid position, and I can't even say surely, Microsoft are investing in the future. We still don't know exactly what the future holds, or what the future looks like, as we're still very much in the console era, but PCs are becoming more and more popular, and we're hearing reports that Microsoft's next Xbox is going to be very different from the last, seeming to be more of an open platform PC with a focus on accessibility and user preference. A far cry from the walled gardens of platform exclusivity we've seen so far since the console war began. We also know that Microsoft will not be releasing a mid-generation console refresh as Sony has for the PS5 Pro. Everything is up in the air, and we're yet to see what PlayStation's future will look like, but we do know that there is a PS6 on the way, and its release date isn't as distant as you might think. One thing is absolutely for sure, as we head into the most uncertain era of gaming to date. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see what happens next. Let me know in the comments below how you're feeling about the future of gaming, and how you thought the State of Play went. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to consider subscribing. I'll see you later in the week for the next part of the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 review, and I wish you all a great rest of your day. Goodbye for now.